hi everybody. My name's Ted. You go ask a question. Go ahead, yell it out. She's gonna ask a question, and then I'll tell you about myself.
Hello, my name is Nadira. I'm the founder of Scriptbook, a European startup. We do box office predictions based on film scripts. And I heard, the previous speakers were talking about compelling content. It starts with that. And they're right, because research shows that the storyline has the highest correlation to box office performance. I was wondering, would, in this case, 20th Century Fox would consider using data science or a certain algorithmic system to see if any film projects are worth producing?
So, unfortunately, you're asking the wrong guy that question. I'm sure the answer is yes, and someone that's much smarter than me probably says yes and could dive deep into that. I am a very non-statistical, non-data-driven guy. I am a gut check guy. I believe in something. I think it might matter. Let's go over there and try it. So sorry, I really can't. If I tried to answer the question, I would be so out of my depth that it probably wouldn't work at all. So I think maybe I should do this. Before I start just opening it up to questions, I should give you a little background as to why the hell I'm even sitting up here by myself, which is fascinating, and give you a little sense of who I am and what I've done. And then you can go, oh, I know what questions to ask him now. So by way of background, I have been, my first career was in television production, directing and shooting. And then I drifted sort of by accident into the technology side about 15 or so years ago, and started working early in that career with a very small engineering company that was buried underneath Apple and working with Apple to build all the video guts of all the professional video applications for Apple computing. And did that for about 7+ years, a little about 7 years. And then I helped start a small little company. I was the founder of a little company that we started in Santa Monica with my partner that became something much bigger than we anticipated. It was called G-Tech. It's these little silver drives that if you use Macs and work in the industry, you've probably seen them around. You buy them in Apple stores around the world. The growth was so explosive that we actually had to sell the company. We couldn't do it ourselves. So we sold it to Hitachi, and then it got sold to Western Digital. And then I was asked, right around that sort of juncture, to join a new sort of startup concept about building a next-gen movie camera, which is that little black box that you see there from a little bit younger version of me. And I was the first employee of this movie camera company called Red that became very popular. And I did that for about 7 years. And I was this odd kind of public face and speaking guy of that company, so I was traveling around the world for like hundreds and hundreds of plane flights a year, and it was amazing and wonderful. I got to sort of see the world and had someone else pick up the tab and got to go to almost every country on the planet at least 4 or 5 times, some 20 times. But then after 7 years of that, I was like, I'm gonna retire from that, and we did good, and I wanted to see my kids a little more and my wife a little more, who was getting aggravated, and it was time to do something new, so I was going to take some time off. And then my friends at 20th Century Fox said, well, if you're going to leave the camera thing, don't really retire, come be our futurist. And I was like, well, okay, well, what does that mean? What, these are good friends of mine, but so it's friendly conversations. I said, well, that's what you'll figure out. I said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, you don't really have any job description or job responsibilities. Just sort of figure out where things might be going so that we can benefit from someone who has their eyes and ears on what might be around the next corner without any real specific goal or target in mind, which is actually really critical to the success of this. And if other entities, other studios or businesses had thought about doing this, I think the trap that you get into is if you have a specific agenda or reason to live in something we call, let's be a futurist, you're making a tactical error. It's a mistake. What you have to do is you have to just be an explorer. You have to be like when people ask what I do, and like, well, what's a futurist? So I'm essentially just a glorified lab rat. That's what I do. I run around the world. I evangelize. I think about things. I talk about things. And I try and learn things, and then I try and bring that back to our organization, and we try and figure out what to do with it. But we never dictate the answer before we start asking the questions. So does that kind of help from a background standpoint? Okay, so do you want me to keep talking a little more about this, or do you guys want to ask questions? Okay, I'll keep talking. So that's kind of the genesis of what I do. Now some of the practicality of what we do at the movie studio is we are exploring what I refer to as looking beyond the rectangle. Maybe I should stand up, right? Now that I'm not doing the thing, it's like, it's very odd. Like, what is feeling weird about this? Like, it's all fine, I'm talking to you guys, you're listening, you seem to be engaged, but I'm sitting on this thing and like there's nobody there, and it's like something in my brain was like, something's not right here, something's not right here. Now that I stood up, now I feel like I'm giving my normal little spiel, so now it's all working. So unless you find Michael.
Michael is detained in traffic, unlikely that he's going to get here before the session's over.
I'll just keep gabbing
so
away
you have
then.
a choice. You can either go as you're going right now, or I'm happy to sit down and ask questions too.
That's up to you guys.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Let me just
Do you guys have questions? You like what he...
Just keep talking.
All right,
I'll just keep going. Okay. This is fun now. It's like a flea market. Yeah, let's go. Do that. Okay. So where did I leave off? Oh, talking about the practicalities of what we're doing, right? So we essentially started our first little laboratory. Now we have 3 or 4 of them around the lot. And an unusual thing happened at the studio. Because of what I was mentioning before, we started with the idea of let's explore the future, and we didn't really have an end goal in mind, even though sort of where I live is within the feature film side of the business. It instantly became this cross-divisional thing, which is very unusual for those that work in the big movie studio world. The bigger the studio and the bigger the entity, the more siloed things get, and the more people are just like, they work in their own little individual worlds, and they don't really think about what other people are doing. Because we were not project-specific or thinking about what we should do in a specific area, suddenly we became this sort of little lightning pot for people to come over and check out our cool stuff. And it was, and we didn't put any restrictions on that. So when the Fox Sports guys wanted to come over and learn, we're like, sure, come on over. When the interactive guys wanted to come, the location-based guys wanted to come, the news guys wanted to come, and the movie and TV people wanted to come, we were just like, we just opened our doors and said, yeah, this is what we're working on, and this is what we think is interesting, and this is what we're learning from. So that is in and of itself kind of an unusual dynamic that continues to surprise a lot of people that we're able to pull that off. And I think it's just simply because we didn't build rhetoric, we just built stuff, and we started to mess with the stuff, and we started to show people how cool the stuff was. And it didn't matter what you might be thinking to do with it, it just happened to be this is where we think it's going. So now into kind of what we think. What I think about a lot is this concept of what I call breaking out of the rectangle, right? So this is sort of a big rectangle. That thing there is a rectangle. You all have little rectangles in your pockets probably. You're all holding them. You're multitasking at the same time. But that's what I call restricted space. It's, you're locked in. Even if it's really, really big like this, or if you go to like a big movie theater, it's still a thing that has a border. And we pretend that it doesn't have a border. Now, technology allows us now to break out of that border. That border is no longer a restriction of the technology that we live in. We can remove the border. Just like as you guys are looking at me and I'm looking at you, well, there's no border here. I mean, there's walls and stuff, right? But I have a visual view that I can do this with, right? So at the core, what we're really doing when you sort of break it down is we're just exploring what happens if you don't have to do this and you can do this. And it's like a new wonderland of experiences. So I also take this sort of very broad view of what that means. There's this sort of nuclear heat on all things virtual reality based, and I am one of the reasons that sort of nuclear heat exists. Not the biggest reason, but I'm a very big protagonist and very bullish on VR and AR and all of that type of personalized head-mounted entertainment. But that's only one sliver of a category of what we just call immersive entertainment. And it doesn't have to just live on your face. It can live in a theatrical environment. This is something we're doing as a partnership with a big technology company called Barco, and I have a role there. we had fun calling it CinemaVangelist for a while, and then I wanted to get a little more serious. So now my new title there is a Chief Creative Officer, which God knows what the hell that means. But we're exploring the boundaries of what can happen in a movie theater when you start blowing the walls out of it and actually make it more like a theme park experience. If you want to see what that looks like, you can just Google Barco Escape. That's the concept's called Escape. We did 2 movies so far, 2 Fox movies, the first Maze Runner and the second Maze Runner, and we made sections of it in this sort of fully panoramic, all-around-you view. And that's an interesting sort of part of our discovery process. On the VR and AR side, we spend a lot of time working with all these companies, if you're tracking it, that you've heard of, like Oculus, like Valve and Steam, like Sony, like Samsung, the technology companies that sort of at the core of figuring out what might be possible from a technological standpoint. They are all trying to also figure out how to feed content into these technological pieces that they're building. And they're all struggling with that because that's not really their business, right? So they're kind of bringing in people from other worlds. Oculus has picked up a bunch of people from Pixar, and they've introduced a concept they call Story Studio, and that's starting to work and starting to feel. So they're getting smart enough to know that they have to kind of reach into the worlds of creativity to build the content pipelines that are going to be critical to this new medium's success. And what we're seeing in the world, so what we did is we built this little lab, and it has 5 little steps that happen to be where I sort of work. So because it has steps that go down, it got the nickname of the bunker, the VR bunker. And it's like there's a bunch of articles and things, press likes to write about it because it's called a bunker, right? So when you read about it in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times or something, you'd think we literally built the fucking Bat Cave at Fox. Like, people are like, wow, like, you guys have a bunker? That's crazy. And then they come and actually see it, and it's like this room with a whole bunch of VR headsets and a bunch of computer monitors and a bunch of projectors, and they're like, this is the bunker? Like, yeah, this is it. Like, the reality of the spectacular thing that's going to happen has nothing to do with the physical space that you're in, that you walk down these steps. It's when I put this thing on your face and watch what happens. And to a man and to a woman, they are amazed at the first time they do it. So I'm just curious from this crowd, who's done virtual reality? Good, maybe 70% of you. Who's done sort of what I would call the highest end of virtual reality, which is the tethered experiences? So if you've heard of something called the Oculus Crescent Bay or the Vive system, anybody done that? Okay, so less of you. All right, a lot less of you. So that's interesting. And what's really fascinating about the fact that just a few of you raised your hands there is there's an industry that's getting extraordinarily well-funded very quickly. But what's really interesting right now is we're literally all just talking to ourselves. Like, we're in this group, we think everybody knows all this stuff, and we think everybody has this sense of amazement and wonder that we've been living in every day, and I've been living in it now for 2 years. I wear these headsets on my face, on average, 6 to 8 hours a day, like doing stuff. Not continuously 8 hours a day, but on and off, an hour at a time. I've done 4-hour-plus experiences, so I'm a very odd case. I'm a very early patient zero kind of case. I can still talk to you, my eyes still work, so far everything's okay. But there's not a lot of data yet, other than me telling you that I'm fine, and I'm really not fine, as you could probably tell. But, you know, I'm a big kid, and I like to have fun, and I like to explore all this stuff. So when it comes to this challenge that we have now as this nascent industry that's growing up, I often sort of give these metaphors of, imagine you're at a car race and everybody that wants to do this thing is sitting in a car and we're just revving our engines. And we're revving and revving and revving and revving, and there's the track right ahead, but they haven't dropped the flag yet and we don't know. So that's where what I feel like is going on. The other sort of metaphor that I sort of give to people is, imagine that you and all your friends are sitting in this great hot tub, right? And it's like nice and warm, and you're in the hot tub all together, and you think everybody gets this. But really, the only ones that get it are the ones that are in the hot tub so far, and it's a very small amount of people. We want everybody to come into the hot tub and see how like nice and warm and cozy it is in the hot tub. But we forget amongst ourselves that it's such a small amount of people that have done this. And the amount of awareness, the amount of press, the amount of attention that this medium is getting now, and this is not the first time that this technology has been sort of attempted to be brought out. If you do a little historical thinking and research in it, you will see that it's been tried a number of times, and it always has kind of toppled over. This time might be different. Now, you might be surprised to hear me having a little trepidation here, because everybody that'll come up and talk to you about VR and AR and all this brave new world of visual experiences will be so insanely bullish, and you'll see, like at least 3 times yesterday in some of the sessions, they were putting up some of these research numbers with these huge predictions of how big this is going to be. And that's interesting and intriguing, but I don't think any of this has any validity at all. I don't think anybody really knows, and I'll tell you why. It has nothing to do with the technology. The technology, I can tell you, is viable. It works. I live it, and I work with it every day. It's going to get better, exponentially better, very, very fast, just like everything you do. Think about the kind of mobile cell phony device you had 10 years ago versus what you have today. Think about it just 5 years ago. Think about it just 3 years ago, right? We're on that same exponential curve in VR. So all those things that everybody's really worried about and think are going to be super, super hard, that's actually the easy stuff, believe it or not. People wondering about, will they be able to make stories in VR when there's no sort of directed on-rails experience, or that's not really how VR works, and everybody's super worried about that. That's the least of my worries. There's a lot of creative people out there already exploring and figuring it out. Here's my, not a worry, but here's the thing that I think everybody should be aware of. Every new technology, when it starts to drop into mass market adoption, which potentially will be next year with all of this stuff. We're in our little hot tub together right now, and the bigger hot tub is coming, is something I call human dynamics and behavioral cues. And what do people want to do, and when do they want to do it, and will they adopt to something new to give them a more intense experience? So I give sort of these touch points, and I think about if you went into a coffee shop 20 years ago, and you saw what was going on socialization-wise in a coffee shop, go into a coffee shop today and you see people holding these little rectangle pieces of glass. And they're sort of semi-interacting with each other, kind of like this, but they're doing things. People are at a conference now. Half of you are like on your phone. You're listening to me, but you're like multitasking and you're touching your little piece of glass. That would be insane 20 years ago. People would think you were terribly rude and what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But we've socialized that into our world that is now not just acceptable, it is the new norm, right? It is the new sort of accepted standard of how we socialize and work in the world. So there's a question that presents itself as to, will people and what kind of environments will they accept wearing something on their face to increase that sense of ability to do things? So all the things that we do on a little mobile device, play games, do our email, do our text, video chat, communicate. Imagine if I could give you the largest, most immersive canvas in the world to do that. So no longer it's like little 4.7-inch version. You strap this to your face and magnify it, and it's gigantic. It could give you the illusion that it's 100 feet in front of you. And you could do anything. You could watch a movie in your own personal giant movie theater. You could play games that are all around you. You could bring up 27 sort of work palettes all around you. Like sometimes some of you probably work with multiple monitors sitting on your desk, like 3 or 4 monitors. Imagine that, and you could take that kind of thing everywhere you want it on the planet, whenever you needed it. So again, in my sort of patient zero world, I do that a lot. I travel with the mobile version of VR, the Gear VR, which is kind of the highest end of mobile VR today. Pretty much every time I fly in an airplane, there's like articles about this and pictures floating around the internet, I use my Gear VR. I put it on. I watch a movie in that instead of watching it on my laptop. I play games in it. I do things in it. Invariably, someone will tap me on the shoulder and go, "Excuse me, like, what is that on your face?" Now, I always have 2 of them in my bag. And then I start passing it around. And before you know it, the entire plane becomes this viral experience of people checking this out. If I'd have known I was going to do this instead of doing a talk, I'd have brought the videos and I could show you. But it's phenomenal, and it's fascinating. And what I've discovered is that because virtual reality is an outside-to-look-in experience, the social dynamics are very, very different than an inside-to-look-out experience. So you've all probably seen and touched or witnessed the thought process and the little moment of excitement about Google Glass and then that crumbling. That has nothing to do with technology. That has simply to do with, well, in my presentations I call it the CF, which is the creepiness factor. It's just creepy. Like, you got this thing on your face and it's outward bound and you're looking at it and people are like, are you talking to me? Are you videoing me? What are you doing? What's going on? It's actually very similar to Bluetooth headsets, you know, the little Bluetooth headsets. Now, believe it or not, I just learned this the other day because I was talking to somebody about this and he's like, you know, there's a really cool website for people that make fun of this. There's a website called BluetoothDouchebag.com. And I was like, you can find it online. And I was like, that's so true because, like, you know, nobody wears this like Borg thing in their head. Like, it's like, are you talking to me? Are you talking to somebody else? Okay, one thing if you're sitting around and you don't want to like hold your phone up and you put a headset in to make a phone call, that's fine. But like walking around with it all day long is just really creepy, right? So what's different about VR than that, than the Google Glass thing or the Bluetooth headset? I find that it's different because it's a personalized experience that is much better, much more intense, much more evolved than anything that has come before it. It's fascinating and interesting at this point in time, in this juncture. We're still in the early days. I still kind of refer to it as the brick cell phone days of VR. Like, remember when, you know, you all saw Wall Street and Gordon Gekko was on the beach with his cell phone, and it was like this thing, and this giant thing, and it was goofy, but he was talking on the beach in the Hamptons, and that was transformational. VR is just like that right now. We are in that stage of VR. It's clunky, it's a little goofy, but I do this a lot, and I socialize with it a lot, and nobody walks away saying to me, nobody like has ever said to me, I'm never gonna wear that, or it's gonna mess up my hair, or it's gonna like, they don't care, because the minute they put it on, they realize how amazing it is, and then you get this sort of moment, right? So should I stop talking? Am I good? Keep going? Should I ask questions now? That give you enough background? I don't know.
First of all, thank you so much. I mean, this has been awesome.
Fine.
There are some VR headsets.
Yes,
up
there's
there.
a whole little lab upstairs that you guys can experiment.
And
do the leap motion stuff if you can, because that will teach you about something called presence, which is what is truthfully the true wonder of VR is you will actually feel like you're in a virtual place. It's the most amazing mind trick of all time, right? All of these things are just mind tricks. I mean, obviously that's not really me there. It's just a picture of me there, right? But we believe, we want to believe, right? This is a better we want to believe machine. And the technology makes things more real, which is why we call it virtual reality. So fantasy becomes reality in a way that even the best movies, there's still that little bit of separation. When you're sitting in a movie house, if you have a really good imagination, like a lot of us do, you will get transported, right? When a really good movie happens, you forget you're watching a screen, sort of, almost, right? In the world of virtual reality, the technology can be so embracing that not only will you almost forget, you will actually forget. Like I do experiences and I forget that I'm not actually doing this. It also allows you to build memories, which is really fascinating. So when you do virtual reality experiences, especially live action virtual reality experiences, which is a very early emerging thing we're working on too, when you remember it a couple days later, like, you know, when you remember a movie that you saw a few days later, it's not like a real memory. You just remember you saw a movie and that was a great movie. When you see a piece of creative content, could be CG, could be live action, doesn't matter, and you've seen it in VR, there's a part of your brain that gets so tricked that you'll wake up 2 days later and you'll have the memory like it actually happened to you, like it's a real memory, which is different than a flat screen memory. So those are the things to just sort of be aware of how powerful it is.
Thank you for your time, Ted.